In today's episode, we're discussing People Matter and Money Matters with Dan Lear. Welcome to the Law Firm Launch Podcast.
I am here with Jaimee Hall, sort of on the Financially Legal podcast, but for those listeners of Jaimee's podcast, sort of not. But let's do some quick introductions so that folks who are tuning in can know who we are and what kind of insanity or nonsense or even just boring content that we're creating we're up to. So Jaimee, why don't you tell folks who you are and what you do?
I will. Never boring.
Yes. This is going to be awesome.
It's going to be awesome. So yeah,
Stay
Jaimee
tuned.
Hall, with Legal Back Office. And we have a podcast called the Law Firm Launch Podcast. And it's very interesting when we meet other professionals within the legal industry. We do consulting for small to mid-sized law firms and outsourced accounting, marketing, and HR. So we're in this role where we're constantly trying to help law firms be better, do better, and grow. And Dan and I met, Dan from Gravity Legal, he'll introduce himself. And we had this great conversation around trying to help law firms be successful. And so we thought, why not do this crazy thing where instead of doing like a podcast, we do like a friend cast where we hop on and we share knowledge that will truly be beneficial from our perspectives for law firms. So here we are today to have this hopefully fun and successful conversation in which lawyers can gain something from it and how to be better and do better in their firm. So that's who I am. And welcome to both the Law Firm Launch Podcast and Dan.
Thank you, Jaimee. Financially Legal. Yep. And for those of you who normally tune into Jaimee, my name is Dan Lear and I'm head of marketing and partnerships at Gravity Legal. We do payment processing for lawyers and law firms. So we help lawyers get paid faster and accept credit cards, debit cards, electronic checks, and really sort of scale up and reduce the burden of getting paid and the pain and all of the challenges that brings. So, and then I have a podcast called Financially Legal where we talk about the finance and economics of law firm practice and legal practice, but also tend to drift into broader conversations about sales and other sort of key aspects of running a law firm.
Cool. I'm so excited about this because, as we had this sort of lively discussion around, law firms, they're just like any other business where they don't run without cash, right? I mean, money matters as much as we want to pretend like it doesn't. It matters.
And we don't even want to pretend like it doesn't. Like that's
right.
Our business is money. So like, believe me, lawyers, listen. Money matters.
Money matters.
Yes.
If you take one thing away from this podcast,
right.
It's like money matters, but money matters not without the absence of people, right? And I think that's where we get mixed up as we get so wrapped up in, well, if I care about money, that means I don't care about people. And how we get money in law firms is through the services that we provide. And we can't provide services unless we have clients to, consume those services. And so certainly getting those clients and investing in how we go about selling our services and our legal services is an incredibly integral part to, our firms being successful. And so Dan and I had this great conversation around, selling services. How do you as lawyers, sell legal services in a more effective way? And we were even taking a step back and saying, do law firm owners really even understand their clients and their ideal clients, not just in a broad sense, but what is my competitive advantage? What's the value that I really offer that's unique, set apart from other firms? And how you identify that is by saying, okay, who is my ideal client? So Dan, maybe you could share some of the things that we were talking about on understanding your ideal client, right? And how do you go about that process? And what would your advice be for law firms in that arena?
Yeah, I'm actually going to take this in a bit of a You did such a great job in the setup. I'm actually going to take this in a little bit of a different direction and kind of bring in even one additional concept that I've thought about a lot in this context and maybe can be a good window for us to jump into this. So I think so many lawyers for a long time, and I don't know that this is necessarily a bad thing. And we can talk about this too. This is even more like sort of high level marketing and kind of strategy. But like, I think for a long time and still a lot of lawyers do practice what's known as door law. And I don't know, have you ever heard that term, Jaimee?
No, enlighten me.
So it's really simple. It's kind of dumb, but the notion is like they just do whatever comes in the door, right? People ask you what you do and you just do whatever comes in the door.
What do you want us to do?
And
Sure.
totally, like divorce one day, immigration the next. And there's a certain subset, and again, we can talk about this too, of lawyers, who are in small towns or, whatever, perhaps have a practice like that, either necessity requires or any other number of reasons. But I think for the vast majority of lawyers, and certainly for lawyers who even want to live, say, in a rural environment and practice in a different jurisdiction, because we've definitely learned that's possible. There's, I think, a really important exercise that a lawyer or law firm needs to go through to sort of figure out who it is they want to help and how they're going to build a firm that is designed to help those folks. Because the challenge with door law is it's terribly inefficient. It's really costly, not even from a monetary perspective, not only from a monetary perspective, but from an investment of time perspective, to teach yourself divorce and then teach yourself something else and constantly be code switching like that. And so I think one of the most important reasons, or one of the reasons that it's most important to identify your ideal client, is so that you can figure out kind of how you can build something that doesn't require you to invest a ton in sort of attracting and learning one practice area and then totally switching and attracting a client and learning another and then the third. So I know that's a little bit of a different angle maybe than we talked about initially, but I wanted to bring that up because I think that's key. And then I wanted to also add in, and then would love for you to chime in. Like, I think a lot of lawyers went to law school, if not necessarily with an idea about what type of person they wanted to help, what type of problem they wanted to solve in the world, whether they had an experience with divorce early on in their lives or, some immigration situation or small businesses, whatever that is. And I think by focusing on an ideal client, it can really help you sort of channel that energy that lawyers hopefully brought to practice or bring to practice about wanting to help a certain group. But that's a lot of me talking. So let me throw it back over at you.
Yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying. I think that, there are multiple strategies to choosing a practice area that you think is going to work for you. And while I love the idea of like a niche focus because it is easier to market, it's easier to target and all those things, there is space, right, for those lawyers in maybe smaller towns across America where they kind of have to be all things to all people in terms of maybe I practice several different practice areas. But identifying who your ideal client is within those practice areas, I think does sort of play to your point, though, of inefficiencies, right? So like if I'm doing divorce and I'm doing immigration and I'm doing bankruptcy, I might be in a small town in which maybe I feel like I have to do that. But do I do divorce that's both like low asset, high contention litigation,
Yep.
Low contention, amicable, low dollar value? But am I doing volume or am I doing like relationship quality based but niche? I think even just making those decisions helps focus you a little bit, and bringing it even to payments and financials. If you're fixed fee and your hourly and your contingency, having to always pivot, and ensuring you're staying on top of getting paid, because again, money matters. Like there's an inefficiency there too. And simply just making a choice, that, okay, I'm going to do immigration, I'm going to do family law, and I'm going to do bankruptcy, but I'm going to do all fixed fees, right? Or
Yep.
I'm going to focus on this type of client, I think is really valuable. And one of the other points that you and I were talking about before was the idea of like a true partnership and being a true partner with your customer and your client. It means there's an actual relationship there. What their need is and what their goal is. There's an efficiency built into that too.
Yep.
Maybe we could kind of go that direction, I think, and talk a little bit about, okay, now you know who your ideal customer is. You have a customer in the door. What's the best way to really connect with that customer, get the most value, provide the most value to them, but also like really, I guess, make sure they walk away getting what they wanted. That idea of like a true partnership with your customer. How do you create that? What are some ideas on how you be that true partner?
Yeah, it's really interesting. And I want to just linger on maybe the question for a minute too, because I think everybody says that that's what they want, right? Everybody says like, I want my client to view me as a true partner. But I think often they act or they institute kind of business practices, or they don't execute their marketing well enough that it doesn't really set the stage for that relationship to be seen in that way.
Sure.
And like, I mean, what comes up for me, and I'm going to get kind of nerdy, but again, I'm bringing the financially legal aspect to this. And so this is kind of nerding out a little bit on these kind of finance principles is, I guess, the role that I'm supposed to bring. But like, there's this notion in the software world of lifetime customer value. And again, we don't have to get too nerdy, but just think about this for a minute. It's the notion that like, this is how much money you think you'll make from someone over a given period of time, their lifetime, and how much they'll pay you. And cell phones do this. Like they, all of us who have these cell phone contracts, like they've engineered this idea within an inch of its lives, right? To ensure that your contract ends right at the time or just a little bit early so they can extract a little bit more, and like timing all of this stuff. And lawyers don't need to be that sophisticated, but I think often what does happen is that a client walks in the door for a lawyer and they're like, whatever, I need a divorce. And the lawyer's like, great. A divorce costs $10,000. Put that into your, into my trust account. I will bill against it. And then, we'll be done when you're divorced. And there's no consideration for sort of, and again, we think about this from a payments perspective a lot. Like, what are you asking a client to do to put up like, $10,000 just right out of the gate? And again, I'm not saying you shouldn't charge that, nor am I saying that you shouldn't get paid what you're worth. But like, and again, it's just one simple example. If you can set up a situation, again, installment payments are easy, but even a situation in which you begin to sort of think about this customer, not just as kind of a one and done 6-month, $10,000 divorce, but someone with whom you're building a relationship over a longer period of time. And you may find, sure, you may not get that $10,000 up front, but if you can be a part of that divorce and also potentially any renegotiations of the child, I'm totally blanking on the custody agreement.
Yeah.
And then potentially also a part of their estate planning as that matures. Or let's say they get remarried and they want a prenup, or there's other issues that come up, or they start a small business. Like thinking instead of like, hey, how can I, and the financial aspects are most obvious, but I think it can also come in your marketing, right? Like, how can I build a relationship with this person such that over the lifetime of their relationship with me, I'm able to potentially charge them more, but also take advantage of this relationship that I'm building with them. And again, the most obvious way to do that is potentially rethinking how you charge them, but there's lots of other ways you can do that. So there's one thought that at least occurs to me where, again, I think lawyers think about it like, again, your customer lifetime value is $10,000 and your lifetime is 6 months. And then it's like, we're done and I never want to hear from you again. So I don't know tell me your thoughts. Kind of, maybe I've taken us in a totally crazy direction.
No, I think it's a perfect direction, because I think, when we see a customer in like a retail, setting, I'm purchasing a product. So I have a product, I purchased it, it's in my bag. Now I'm at home, I'm going to use that product. But how many times have you gotten to disagreements with your significant other over your Target bill? Right? Like there's an obsession with like Target, right? It's like, actually one of my best friends just turned 40 and we did a big, party for her last Sunday. And then we hung out all day Monday, just like whatever, going to lunch and walking around. And she was like, ooh, do you want to go to Target? Like, for like her 40th birthday, it's like on the agenda, like go to Target and buy stuff, right? Like there's something that like feels good about continually going back to Target. And I love that, because I feel like it's like a national treasure right now, going to Target. It's like, it's something that everybody can relate to, right? And, or like, the Starbucks or the Caldi's, whatever the thing is that draws you in on a regular basis and you're continually compelled to spend your dollars, right? If we think of like legal, like how much the services that we provide are meaningful to people. They change
Yep.
their lives. They're helpful to them. They help them mitigate risk. They help them capitalize on opportunities. They help them fill the gaps of pain. Like really the services that we provide matter. And we won't even know of our clients' needs if we're not engaging in that real relationship with them. And
Yep.
real relationship means they don't always need us, but it doesn't mean they don't have needs that we can't fill. Just like Target has can fill lots of needs, right? And I love, one of my clients actually did this really cool sort of grassroots organic campaign of referral building, where he was like, you know what, I want to go to coffee, lunch, or happy hour with former clients where their case has already been wrapped up, but we formed a particular connection just to check in with them and see how they're doing. And he did that. He went to like 50 different coffee, lunch, or happy hours over the course of like a month, right? I mean, it was like this whirlwind. 100% of those meetings turned into additional business.
Wow.
Not from them directly, but you know what? I'm so glad we had lunch today. And you know what happened over that lunch? It was, oh, I've got this roof issue. And the lawyer's saying, oh, I know a roofer. Do you want me to send you the phone number? Because that person's need is their roof is leaking. And like they could care less about your legal services because they don't need them right now. But you know what? Their roof is leaking. They do need their roof repaired. And if you can be a part, I think, of filling people's needs outside of just your services, they see authenticity in that. And they see you as then now a friend and a true relationship in their life that they can go to and trust, that you're not just trying to rack up their bill or sell them on services that you don't need, or just trying to use them to get other cases. Like this is truly about filling a need. And then it will come back to you, whether it's in the short term or in the long term. So I think you definitely hit on something powerful there.
Well, and I even like that if we take it back to sort of our first question of finding your ideal customer, right? Like if you're working with that group of people or that specific person that you're super passionate about helping, it's going to feel really organic to be like, or even to know, like, hey, the types of people that I normally work with often have credit card disputes with the Target. So like here's a debt collection service that I work with, or like here's a whatever, here's whatever the service may be, a car repair, whatever, right? Like here's the service that I've referred other clients to because I know that they often come across these problems.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And one of the, I think, when we were having this conversation before, we were talking about relationships and about building relationships, but also the idea that relationships do take a lot of time. And, when time is our most valuable asset, and arguably in the pandemic, that's one of the things I think we kind of got back actually, because we're not getting in our cars and driving 30 minutes somewhere, meeting for an hour and driving back 30 minutes. We have an opportunity here though, to how can we use tech even to sell better? So, when we get this relationship thing down, like that's very powerful, but there's also a very practical component, I think, to using technology to help build consistent and stronger relationships, but also to create efficiencies within our sales process. And certainly within our financial process, I mean, technology we can talk about that all across the board of our business, but specifically using tech to sell, we had talked through like ideas of there's a lawyer here in St. Louis, and I watched him do a presentation about his tech stack at ABA Tech Show. His name's Stanley Tate. He was like incredible.
Yeah.
And he started noticing that he was spending so much time in building relationships with potential clients, like on these consult calls. He's like, I'm spending so much time. And then at the end of the day, I might not be a good fit for them for what they're looking for. So how can I make that process more efficient, but also relational and meaningful, but so I can cut to the chase quicker to see, because I don't want to waste their time either if I'm not a good fit for them. And he created these videos that are all on his website, and it encourages people to kind of watch the videos as they're going through the process. So if they go online to fill out a form, they get sent like a series of a couple just 1-minute videos, so they know what to expect when they get on the phone. And he's got this great personality where he says, it's not that I don't like you, but when we get on the phone, it's going to be very to the point and short, and we're going to spend 15 minutes. And here's what I need you to be prepared to tell me right? And then I'll be able to give you great information about how I can help you at the end. But I just want to make sure you're prepared. I thought that was cool because then there's some people that never even make the phone call because they know that he's not going to be a great fit for them in terms of his service.
Right.
And then the people that do get on the phone aren't thrown off because they knew exactly what to expect, right? Because he already set up that expectation. And now he's saved time because he's got 15-minute consults instead of 45 minutes to an hour spending time with someone. And then ultimately it's not going to be a great fit. So it's kind of a different way, I think, of looking at like the building of that relationship and how do you even use tech? And maybe you have some ideas there too in the sales process that perpetuates that efficiency, but also that meaningful connection.
Yeah, it's super interesting. And I'll do a quick shameless plug. Did a podcast episode a couple of weeks ago. I think it was back in January or February on lawyers who had built their own sort of practice management systems using a bunch of different systems. And Stanley Tate was one of the folks who came up. So if folks want to really get nerdy on his tech stack, you can go back and listen to that episode. Mm-hmm. But I think it's a really interesting question because like that, like, I think it requires a business, or in this case, a law firm, to be really thoughtful about how they use that technology, but also what goal they're trying to accomplish using it, right? Like I love that example that you just brought up because Stanley not only communicates really clearly about how he's going to operate and how he's going to work with a certain firm or with a certain client, or kind of how his firm operates, but he's also like really kind of he is building that relationship, right? He's in step by step sort of helping those people move down the path to working with him. And I think that's it seems, and again, that they always say like the people who do it the best make it look easy.
Right.
And I think that's I think that's like very true for Stanley. And I know again from the podcast episode that I do with him, like he invests a lot of money. In fact, he said to me when I interviewed him, like, I view this technology and the amount I pay for it, frankly, as almost like another employee. Mm-hmm. Like I do this instead of hiring someone.
Yeah.
And I think that it really requires a law firm to be really thoughtful about kind of, again, not only what they want to accomplish, but sort of how they want to use that technology to move clients, kind of bring them in and establish that relationship. I think it looks so simple, but I think it's really hard.
Yeah.
Not to discourage people from doing it, but like anybody can create videos. But the ability to sort of, again, communicate brand, communicate expectations, move people down the funnel. But it's totally doable and it's incredibly powerful. And again, you look at someone like Stanley, like I think his business is doing quite well. And he's definitely got some great brand recognition because of what he's built. So I don't know if that was kind of a meditation, I guess, on some of the ideas that you brought up. But
I think it's great. And I think, one thing that sort of maybe even perpetuated him creating this intake process, if you will, was he does understand the value of his time. He understands the value of the service that he provides, and he understands the value of the client's time as well. And we talked about a little bit about, do lawyers really underestimate, I think, the value of relationship with their clients, or underestimate even their own value? Because, society tells lawyers all the time, well, we just think you only care about money, which is like ironic because we know how much they really they care about it, but they really don't care about it, or else they'd be making different business decisions, right? Oh, yeah. Like money matters.
Right.
And so it's just so interesting because, the ABA put out this study that shows that 50% of all Americans think we need less lawyers in our country. And 65% of them think they only care about money and not about their clients. And it's such an interesting statistic. I mean, this is the ABA, right? So this is not like some small state's local bar association, right? And the idea that this persona or this villainizing of lawyers still exists in our country today. And this, and I know this, working with a lot of small to mid-sized law firms, I have found them to be like the polar opposite, right? They care so much about their clients and very little about money. That's why their businesses are getting into a tough spot, right? That's why their cash position is so crunched is they're willing to give far more time on a fixed fee than they're actually billing for because they want to do the right thing by the client. Now they're in the hole or not making money on that fixed fee, right? Or they're not really like maximizing the value of a case because they are trying to save the client money, or they're hiring a lot of people to help deliver good customer services instead of investing in technology. And now they've crunched their bottom line again. But it's because they care so much about the customer. I sort of have thought about this, like the problem is not, that just the money, it's the value of what you provide, right? Like, do you really understand the value of what you're offering to your customers?
I also think that lawyers want to help in a certain way, and they can't be blamed for this. Like, it's really hard to like, I'm not being critical, but like, they spent all this time and all this money and, maybe even wanted to be lawyers for so long that like the way that they help is by like putting their heads down and doing the legal stuff. And I think and again, I have no data to support this, but just like based off of our conversation, Jaimee, and some thinking about this, like I can see why people think that lawyers care only about money, because they say, hey, give me a $5,000 retainer. And then they go away and they like work really hard to solve the person's problem. But for that person, and then they come back, a month or 2 months later, and they've legitimately done a lot of work and put a lot of effort into it. But then they're like, hey, I need more money. Yeah. Right. And again, like we can talk for a lot, and there's lots to be said about better communication, and all of that can be automated. This comes back to the technology piece, but I think it's really interesting to just think like, I think sometimes the reason that lawyers get that perception is again, it's because they care so much about their clients that they don't think to have honest, good conversations with their clients about money.
Yeah.
And they also don't, to your point, do a good job of communicating the value that is happening. Yeah. Right. While they go away and like put their head down and look at statutes and crank away and write briefs and file them and argue with outside, with opposing counsel and all of that. Like all of that is happening, but it's not, that value is not communicated very effectively. And I think that's a really interesting challenge. And again, going back to Stanley, I think that's something he does really well by both setting expectations, but also sort of making the best use of his time.
I think you're right. And I think, the clients, in terms of like the value of your hour is that's the only thing that is communicated, right?
Totally.
It's I'm $300 an hour. And so that's how the client is defining value. And because the lawyer is not using words around that $300 an hour, that's now becoming the value. So now when I see my bill,
and that seems like a lot of money, and it is, right? Like
$300 an hour.
Who else do I pay? Yeah,
I paid $300 an hour for you to draft a letter, right?
Right.
Exactly. And it's like, I used to tell, whenever I worked for a big firm, I used to tell our intake center, right? They took 10,000 calls a month.
Oh wow.
10,000 from 40 different states and the UK, just scheduling consultations for lawyers across the country. This is their singular job, right?
Wow.
With some ancillary things like conflicts, running conflict checks, whatever.
Sure. Yeah.
But when they saw themselves as the scheduling department, they saw themselves in a particular transactional way.
Interesting. Yep.
And whenever we reframed that for them, and I said, listen, these 10,000 calls are coming in because these 10,000 people have a need, a serious need. And they saw our marketing efforts and something compelled them to call us. We didn't call them. They picked up the phone and took their time because they have a need, and they saw hope. When they saw our marketing, they saw hope for their need. You are an intake center. You're not a scheduling department. You give hope. You give hope to people that are in a situation that's the one thing they need, is to know that we're going to come alongside them and help them through this circumstance. I'm going to get choked up because so many of these areas of practice, like this is humanity, right? Like these are people, and this isn't just transactional, like, right. This is relationship, and what we do matters. And when we see the value of what we provide changes people's lives, that is much different than just this $300 per hour. And I'm always amazed too at how lawyers will run themselves into the ground because they know they're $300 an hour externally. But then they're still processing their own payroll. They're still writing checks to pay bills.
Right.
They're still, they're using their phone to scan in mobile deposits. You know, you got to get it like just right.
Right. Get the lights adjusted. Don't get the shadow in the way.
Get a darker background.
Right.
It's a black desk. How much darker can it get? Right. So I always laugh because lawyers understand the hourly value of their time at $300 an hour externally. They don't know how to communicate what that $300 an hour actually means for their customer. And they also spend 40 hours a month plus on doing things like this that they could be paying someone $15 an hour or $20 an hour to do. And yet they're here paying themselves $300. They're not paying themselves $300 an hour. They could be otherwise, billing the client, adding value to the client and not spending their time. So I think it's still like it's my very long-winded way of saying understanding your own value is where you have to start before you can ever communicate what value you're providing to your clients. So, and I'm biased, in that clearly we do outsourced accounting, marketing, and HR because we think a lawyer's best and highest value is doing that, serving their clients and not processing payroll and scanning checks and writing out checks. And we wholeheartedly believe that. And we're passionate about like trying to help lawyers understand the true value of what they're providing, not just the hour, the dollar associated with their hour. So anyways, that was my very long-winded way of going into saying, I think we had such a great conversation around value and how it's being articulated and how it's being perpetuated within their firms.
And I think that's really, if we kind of want to begin to tie this all back up, I think that's really what sales is, right? Mm-hmm. It's not, and I even struggle with this because I think, and maybe you do too, I don't know. I think there's so many hangups and perceptions about, salespeople and what sales is. But it's really, if we really think about it, like it's saying, hey, and to be clear, like you don't just, you have to be in like to do a good job, not only like in sales, but to just like figure out how to really help these people. You have to do a good job in knowing what your value is and knowing how you serve those people, and then putting that in, on the proverbial table in front of them such that you can then say, and it costs this much, however you ask for it, however you build it out, it costs this much for me to provide this value, to provide this assistance for you. And I think that's a really nice sort of summation, right? And the better you can identify who that person is, and that way you can make those words better and make those communications more meaningful and more likely to be kind of persuasive to them. And you can also sort of establish yourself as that partner that they want and that partner that you want to be. So yeah, I completely agree. This notion of value is really central to all of these conversations.
Yeah. And I think, wrapping up with a bow, it's like the schmarmy underbelly of sales that people sort of cringe at, right, is all predicated and built on a lack of authenticity and a lack of relationship, a lack of understanding value, and a lack of being able to communicate that value. So we can kind of curb that schmarmy feeling about sales that people have through approaching selling our services through the lens of relationship, and not forgetting that people matter first, but money also matters. People matter and money matters, because we don't have a business if we don't have money. We don't have money without the people. We don't pay our people in our organizations, and their families don't eat, right, if we don't collect money. So I think that where we've sort of landed here is that both people matter and money matters. And ultimately it's the like marriage of the two, or getting that sweet middle spot of not valuing one over the other, that helps get us the best possible results.
Yeah. And I was just going to say, and I think you sort of hit on this, but you need that money in order to help the next person and the next person. And also, frankly, to support you. And if you have a family, your family or your loved ones, or like, you got to be able to take care of yourself. So like that matters too. So no, I completely agree.
Yeah. Well, this has been awesome. I think it worked.
Yeah. Folks, we hope you enjoyed this, but I know I enjoyed it. I had a great time.
Yeah, me too. I think this was cool. I think we need to coin this friend cast thing, where it's just a genuine conversation amongst friends with like a mutual understanding of a topic. And we just talk about it in a way that other people can take something away from it too. So this has been very cool. Thanks you for my Law Firm Launch podcast listeners, LLP. Thank you. Dan,
yep.
I'll you do
Financially legal folks, always good, and also good to talk to other law firm launch listeners. Happy to be a part of this. So thanks, Jaimee. This has been great.
Awesome. Thank you all. Have a great day.
Thanks for tuning in today. Be sure to hit subscribe or go to legalbackoffice.com for more info.